Provoked by the rising body count of protesters and the imminent execution of a young Iranian rebel, there is massive uncertainty tonight, viewer, over whether President Trump will pull the trigger on Iran. Everyone's wondering, he's been threatening, he's been saying help is coming. What does he plan to do? What appears clear is that given the mood of the US president, he is unlikely to back down until regime change actually takes place in Iran. Trump sees this as a window of opportunity to do what he has wanted to do for years since his first tenure as the American president. Now, I've been speaking to analysts for the last 48 hours to throw together what I'm now going to show you is a 9-step escalation ladder for how things could in one scenario actually play out. And if the last few days are any indication, viewer, nothing is too far-fetched. So let's begin with how this escalation may actually take place. Step number 1, the execution of Irfan Sultani. He is the young Iranian rebel who, after hundreds of protester deaths in that country, the Iranian regime plans to hang a prominent protester, the young Irfan Sultani. Trump escalates, this is of course an imagined scenario, but by saying that a red line has been crossed, and he urges protesters to arm themselves and seize local institutions immediately. Now this, mind you, is a simulation of how things could actually play out. Step number 2, what happens next? Covert aid is then sent to Iran protesters. This, some say, is already actually happening. The US deploys drones for covert airdrops to protester groups, enabling protester groups early seizure of police stations and media outlets. Then this escalates to step number 3, which is cyber attacks on Iran infrastructure. US and Israel launched cyber attacks to disable networks, power grids in key cities of Iran and command centers, creating chaos, allowing protesters to seize government buildings without immediate regime response. Then we go on to step number 4, where there are proxy strikes that take place via US allies. The US is not involved directly yet. In this, basically you have the US authorizing Israeli and Saudi airstrikes on Iran's supply lines, clearing paths for protesters to advance into the deeper areas of Iran, the sensitive sites. Then comes step number 5, where direct arming and training support begins, courtesy the United States. When this happens, the US escalates aid with heavier weapon drops like anti-tank missiles and mines and embedded special forces. That's the most important thing, facilitating coordinated seizures of provincial capitals and institutions in the most important parts of Iran. Then we move to step number 6, targeted drone strikes on suppression forces. In this, the US conducts drone strikes on Iranian units involved in protest suppression, protecting seized sites. This is very easy for the United States to do because they've got bases to operate drones from virtually all around Iran. So it's actually pretty simple for them. Then comes step number 7, which is broader airstrikes. This is where the real might of the US military could hypothetically come into play. Airstrikes and blockade enforcement around Iran. The US bombs Iranian bases and enforces a naval blockade around the Persian Gulf, while airlifting advanced gear directly to protester groups to seize central institutions of Iran. Then comes step number 8, which is very crucial. This is the penultimate step, top-level assassination operations. The US ramps up with precision strikes, eliminating the supreme leader, the Khamenei, the IRGC generals through allied special operations or direct missile hits or decapitation operations, as they are called. And finally, viewer, step number 9 is regime change in Iran. This is the end game. This is the outcome that President Trump wants. Whether it takes this path or not is anybody's guess, but this could be one hypothetical extreme escalation scenario as to the way it works out. The US sustains massive airstrikes, enabling protesters and groups to carry out regime fracture and transition to a new government. 9 steps to a new Iran.
Keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible, and save the name of the killers and the abusers that are abusing you. You're being very badly abused. And I've canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran. And I say make Iran great again. You know, it was a great country until these monsters came in and took it over.
ما برای هر عملی آمادگی داریم. اگه میخوان که برخورد نظامی رو که یک بار امتحان کردند و نتیجه‌ای نگرفتند یک بار دیگه امتحان بکنن، ما آماده ایم. حتی از جنگ قبلی آماده تریم، هم به لحاظ کیفیت هم به لحاظ کمیت. اگر میخوان که گزینه‌های دیگر رو امتحان بکنن، برای اونها هم آمادگی داریم. هر گزینه‌ای که اونها امتحان بکنن، ما آمادگی داریم.
Iran on edge and on US notice. Tehran's anti-regime protests continue to get bloodier as thousands have been reported dead in the brutal crackdown by the Khamenei regime. Information has been hard to come by as the internet remains blocked. Human rights organizations have estimated widespread carnage of protesting Iranians. The defiance this time is bold and clear. The woman lighting cigarettes with Khamenei's posters, a strong statement against the regime. Protesters on the streets with bloodied faces, chanting anti-Khamenei slogans and demanding change and freedom. The extent of widespread unrest in Tehran and beyond. As Tehran prepares to execute the first protester, 26-year-old Irfan Soltani, who was arrested last week and given a death sentence within 2 days, leading to worldwide outrage and condemnation. The regime hit back, organizing counter pro-Khamenei rallies to show that the protests have been sponsored. Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian himself took part in such pro-regime protests. US President Trump assuring help to the protesters. As the carnage grows in Iran, geopolitical tensions simmer as well. Khamenei's future remains uncertain, and the question remains, is a US attack imminent?
I'm going to start by getting a perspective directly from Iran. Tamjeed Hyder is former public relations officer with the Iranian embassy here in India. Tamjeed, welcome. Your opening comments on what you think Trump plans to do. There is a lot of uncertainty in terms of how this is going to play out, but it seems like regime change is very much on Trump's mind. He's also signaled to protesting groups in Iran that help is on its way. He has drawn a red line around the imminent hanging of Irfan Soltani. How is this going to play out in your view, Tamjeed? Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for giving me time. Let's correct the premise immediately. The only time bomb ticking is the one attached to American hegemony in West Asia. Actually, President Trump is not threatening Iran because he's strong. He's threatening Iran because the US-Israeli aggression in June 25 failed to break Tehran's resolve. And President Trump's tweets are not policy, actually. They are the desperate noise of an empire in decline. He speaks of saving the Iranian people while starving them with 25% tariffs and sanctions of decades long. You cannot claim to be a savior while holding a knife of sanctions to a nation's throat. Actually, there are no war clouds over Iran that weren't manufactured in Washington, and it's been going on since decades right now. And you have seen in June 2025. And the 9 steps which I was looking that you proposed here, and they were most of those steps were carried out in June 2025, and you saw the result. In 12 days, they had to reach to a ceasefire without any good result. So this is not a new thing, and the execution of Irfan Sultani that you are speaking with, there is a context to it. Let me just explain the context to it. The court of law, with evidences, has given the order for the execution because the concerned person was not a protester. See, there is a red line between a protester and a rioter. Iranian government.
No, but
they have,
Tamjeed, that distinction is an important one. I'm glad you've made it. But that distinction doesn't matter to Trump because he has defined this as a red line, and he's not going to be looking for that nuance that you are defining right now between a rioter and a protester. But let me get a view in from the United States as well. Michael Patrick Mulroy is former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense of the United States. Michael, welcome. Your opening comments on how you see this playing out. The general understanding right now is that the outcome, no matter which way this plays, for Trump at least, is going to have to be regime change in Iran. How does this go? What path does this take in your view, Michael?
So good to be with you all and your audience. I think it's clear that the U.S. policy now is regime change. The statements made by the president recently, I think, clearly indicate that. And you're right. I think he made a red line. When you say, if you essentially hang, is what he said, but execute protesters, help is on the way. So, and they just had the meeting yesterday at the White House with all of the National Security Council talking about military options. In addition to that, we're seeing U.S. troops being evacuated out of air bases overseas like Al Udeid in Qatar. So this is all the indicators that the president last night likely made a decision on military action. We'll see what kind of military action based on the flow of aircraft, I think, from the United States and other bases into the Middle East, whether it is a short-term, like symbolic strike to show consolidation or support for the rioters, or not the rioters, the protesters, or it's a long, sustained effort to decapitate the regime, which it could be, and depreciate everything underneath it, because they are concerned, of course, even if they take out the Ayatollah, for example. If the IRGC takes over, that's not in a better place for the United States. So that would require a very long, sustained military campaign to degrade their capabilities. I know it's a long answer, but this is all the things that are happening right now. And it's really leading up to a pretty significant event by the United States going on.
I do agree with you. It seems that kinetic action of some kind is imminent. It's just a question of, what in this entire spectrum of possibilities will it actually be? Tamjeed, it's come to a point, and Trump is has a kind of momentum right now after Venezuela. You've seen how he's been talking about Greenland. That doesn't seem to be something he's backing down from as well. And Iran is not new on his plate. This is something he's been talking about aggressively for a long time, including during his first tenure. And like Michael also said, there are a variety of different options for him. It doesn't have to be a full-scale kind of conflict. There are many different military options in front of Trump. And the conventional wisdom right now suggests that something is going to be chosen. There is going to be action from Trump's side. Tamjeed?
Yes. The analysts I spoke with inside Iran and with my sources in Iran, they are also of the same opinion that right now there is war coming to the West Asia again. But like the other guest in your program suggests, that it might be the nature of the war and the conflict might be different from what Trump has been tweeting for the regime change. Because this regime change, the term regime change, has been coined by the US and Israeli regimes and administrations since long right now. And even the June 2025 attack was on the same premise. But you saw the result. And as you mentioned, Venezuela clearly, you saw the backlash and you saw the response from the world leaders. The Trump administration.
But that doesn't bother Trump, Tamjeed. The world leader reactions is something that is lowest in the list of things that bother President Trump. He's made that extremely clear. He has scoffed at European leaders saying that any action on Greenland will mean the end of NATO. What does he care about what world leaders think? But let me just show you a map. I understand the point you're making. Iran is not Venezuela, though many would argue that the geopolitics of it are very similar if you compare the two hemispheres. But I just want to support the point that I was making about the military options in front of the United States. Just take a look at this map and look at how Iran is practically surrounded by United States military depots and bases. There's the Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. There is where there are 2,500 US personnel in Syria. The United States has about 2,000 personnel. Similar strength in Iraq as well, which shares that large border with Iran. There is, of course, the famous Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar with a strength of 13,000. That's the headquarters of the United States presence in the region in Qatar. About 5,000 personnel of all kinds, including fighter pilots, etc., in the United Arab Emirates at the Al Dhafra Air Base near Abu Dhabi. They've got naval support activity in Bahrain with about 7,000 personnel there, huge American naval base. Kuwait's strength about 13,000 who've been there since the 90s. Saudi Arabia about 3,000 and Oman about 600. So look at this map. It's like a crowded list of options that the United States have, whether it is a kind of low-scale, short, sharp conflict or a sustained conflict of the kind that Michael Mulroy was just describing. So, Michael, I actually want to come to you to get, to get clarity on how you see, what is your best guess of what this conflict could look like? Because there is a window of opportunity, I'm guessing, that Trump and his advisors will sense at this time. Protests cannot go on forever. The regime in Iran will be on the back foot. There is a mood on the ground as well. What kind of action do you suppose Trump would choose? I know that's a difficult question, but how do you see it?
So it is a good question. I think everybody's asking it right now. Obviously, there's been likely covert operations going on. Those are going to increase, especially if overt military action is about to happen. There's also going to be a concerted effort to try to unblock the internet from the people of Iran so that the world can see the atrocities that are taking place right now, and that fellow Iranians can see that every province in Iran is actually up in arms and protesting this regime. It'll give them more courage, for example. Specific to the overt military strikes, it's usually done in threes. So they usually give courses of actions that are, you got one that's fairly light, one that's medium, one that's heavy. So the light one will be mostly symbolic strikes against the IRGC, not intended necessarily to cause a lot of death and destruction, but basically a warning shot. The second one would probably be a decapitation strike. So going after the supreme leader and his most senior leadership. That, of course, could uncork the genie, so to speak, which could really amount to a problem if they don't do what I think would be the heavy option, which is not only decapitation strikes, but going down to try to systemically dismantle the security apparatus. Very difficult to do from the air, but if any country can do it, obviously I'm biased, but the United States would be the most effective, and probably joined by Israel, quite frankly. And they'll try to make it so that the IRGC really doesn't have the capacity just to come and step in. The other, I guess, hybrid of this would be do a symbolic strike, wait for Iran to retaliate, which they already said they would, and then use that as a excuse to go up the escalatory ladder. So if they strike at Al Udeid like they did last time, then they would come back with the medium or potentially the heavy. And I think having been in many of these discussions, that's probably part of the what they're looking at, these contingency plans to do what next if there is a retaliation.
One of the reasons, apart from everything that has just been said, why it is highly plausible that there will be some form of action from the United States in Iran in this window of opportunity as Trump sees it, is in this next report I want to show my viewers. Tamjeed and Michael, stay with me. The US-Iran standoff has entered dangerous new territory right now. but it's very difficult to forget that just 6-7 months ago, the United States had struck nuclear sites inside Iran using stealth B-2 bombers. It was a rare and extreme kinetic operation where American forces struck key Iranian nuclear sites just in June last year, prompting very sharp warnings from Tehran and escalating global concerns. 6 months later, more military action is imminent, and this time it is for regime change. Here's a reminder of what we saw in June 2025.
In the early hours of June 22, 2025, US military forces launched a precision strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities in Fordo, Natanz and Isfahan. The operation, called Operation Midnight Hammer, used a combination of long-range B-2 Spirit stealth bombers and submarine-launched Tomahawk cruise missiles in what Pentagon officials called a deliberate and precise strike.
The U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror.
It was the largest operational deployment of B-2 bombers in US history, with 7 stealth bombers flying more than 18 hours and refueling in mid-air to reach Iranian airspace undetected. The bombers delivered multiple bunker busters specifically intended to destroy deep buried enrichment infrastructure. More than 24 cruise missiles supplemented the aerial assault, hitting key nuclear work sites. Hours after the operation concluded, Trump took to social media and television to defend the action. He declared that US forces had completely and totally obliterated Iran's key nuclear sites, and also warned that Tehran must now seek peace instead of escalation.
Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight.
In the days leading up to the strikes, Donald Trump publicly signaled a hard line against Tehran's nuclear ambitions. Trump had repeatedly insisted Iran cannot be allowed to possess nuclear weapons.
It's painful for both parties, but I'd say Iran is not winning this war. And they should talk, and they should talk immediately before it's too late.
Iran's leadership denounced the strikes. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei described the strikes as a big mistake by the US and rejected claims that Tehran's nuclear program was crippled.
به مراکز هسته‌ای ما حمله کردن که البته این در خور پیگیری جزایی در دادگاه‌های بین‌المللی است به طور مستقل.
Khamenei pledged that punishment continues for perceived enemies and vowed a strong response, signaling Iran's intent to resist foreign pressure and intervention. The US-Iran confrontation has now reached a new level of intensity, with regional and global powers closely watching each development. Bureau Report, NDTV.
Michael, coming back to you for a final question, what kinds of conversations, in your view, would the Trump administration be having with other countries in the region, Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Israel and the others at this point of time, beyond the conversations that are happening in the United States within the White House?
So I think there'll be 2 parts. I think the United States has already heard from many of the regional partners of ours that they do not want to see a U.S. military strike on Iran.
Yeah.
If the U.S. is going to go ahead, and I don't think that's going to stop them, then those countries are going to want assurances that the United States is going to defend them. Because as you already pointed out, we have military facilities and capabilities spread throughout the region.
Yes.
And we've already seen that they are more than willing, they being Iran, to strike back at those, especially Al Udeid. So I think they're going to want to start the conversation, and many of them are going to want the exact same security assurances that Qatar got recently, when it's essentially like an Article 5 for NATO. If you're attacked, we'll defend you. That's what the conversation is going to be. If that doesn't happen, or at least the initial agreement to that, there's going to start being a lot of questions on whether these countries are going to want U.S. military presence in their country. I think they do for their own purposes, but they're going to use this as a leverage point to essentially get the same type of agreement as Qatar.
Well, we're going to continue looking very closely at how this entire situation plays out. It is volatile at this time, but we will continue to ask the big questions and try and get clarity for our viewers in India and across the world, and especially in the Middle East region, watching NDTV for this coverage. Thank you very much, Michael and Tamjeed, for joining me on India Matters tonight. In its 46 years of existence, the Islamic Republic of Iran has two supreme leaders. For the first 10 years of its existence, for the first 10 years, the leader and ideologue of the revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, and on his death in 1989, his ardent disciple, Haji Khamenei. Take a look at this. This helps you understand who's running Iran.
Mentored by Ayatollah Khamenei in revolutionary ideology, Ali Khamenei was the natural successor. And Khamenei largely continued his predecessor's vision in the shaping of both his domestic and foreign policy decisions. Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is committed to ruling under Islamic law, with power concentrated in the clergy. He remains steadfast in his opposition to Western powers and is intent on exporting this ideology across the region. Born in the city of Mashhad in Iran's Khorasan province, Sayyid Ali Hosseini Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was the fifth child born into an ordinary pious cleric family. The young Ali went to a maktab, or a religious school, in his hometown. When he turned 18, to further his theological studies, he first went to Najaf in Iraq and later to Qom in Iran. It was in Qom where Khamenei studied under Ayatollah Khomeini from 1958 to 1964, developing a relationship with the religious leader that would change the course of Iran. In the years between 1963 and 1979, Khamenei was arrested several times for spreading anti-Shah sentiments while giving lectures and sermons across the country. In 1976, he was exiled from Iran, but continued to lay the groundwork for the revolution abroad. He eventually returned to Iran in 1978. After the revolution, Ali Khamenei held various positions in the newly formed Islamic Republic, including president, before taking power in 1989 with the death of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khomeini. Very little is known about Khamenei's personal life. Khamenei has not granted a single personal interview to any media outlet, foreign or domestic. Nor has he hosted a single press conference since taking office in 1989. A rare 1993 remote interview of his wife confirmed that he is married with 6 children. Ali Khamenei is the longest surviving leader in the Middle East. Despite the political forces that have opposed him throughout his tenure,
حالا غیر از اینکه خود من حقیقتاً لایق این مقام نیستم و این رو بنده میدونم.
Iran's supreme leader has proven to be exceptional at utilizing political power, religious influence, and military control to consolidate power and strengthen his regime.